please join me in welcoming Ellen Davis.
So I'm going to start by being honest. I'm nervous right now. No, nervous isn't a strong enough word. I'm terrified. My decision to speak here tonight came as a surprise to my friends and family. Let's just say that public speaking isn't exactly in my comfort zone. Last year, after presenting to a group of my peers, the attending gently suggested that perhaps I should try a beta blocker next time. But believe me, there isn't enough medicine in the world to stop my nerves tonight. But that isn't just because of the stage or the audience. It's also because of what I'm going to share. 3 years ago, I couldn't have imagined saying any of this out loud. Not to my friends, not to my family, and certainly not to a whole room full of people. Back then, I was convinced that if anyone knew what was really going on inside my head, that it would change everything. That admitting I needed help would mean I didn't belong here. And medical school only reinforced that belief. From the moment you apply, the norm is to hide any sign of a struggle. We're told not to mention mental health in our applications because sure, medicine wants resilient students, but not the sort of resilience that comes from dealing with mental illness. And once you're admitted, the message continues. Medicine is about pushing through. Struggling is okay as long as no one else can see it. You're expected to do it all and make it look effortless, to be stressed but never overwhelmed, to manage it all quietly. And that silence is deadly. And have any of you met a medical student or physician with perfectionistic tendencies? And how many of you are that person? Many of us were drawn to medicine because we were perfectionists in the first place. We were the straight-A students, the overachievers, so it was natural to gravitate towards a field that valued precision and high stakes. Then you get to medical school and everything is amplified. Suddenly you are surrounded by other high achievers, all equally driven and intelligent. Medical school doesn't just attract overachievers, it often reinforces and amplifies our worst tendencies. Perfectionism is everywhere in medicine. It's tied into our culture. I mean, who wants a doctor who's okay with being just okay? But this pressure to never make a mistake doesn't stop with how we practice medicine. It shapes how we see ourselves. We hold ourselves to impossible standards and then tear ourselves apart if we aren't able to reach them. This kind of perfectionism isn't just a personality quirk, it's a risk factor. Medical students struggle with mental health issues at significantly higher rates than the general population. Nearly half will be burned out at any given point. 1 in 4 experience clinically significant depression, and perhaps most concerningly, 1 in 10 report thinking seriously about suicide. That's more than double the rate of the general population. Let me put this in a way our medical students can understand. A 23-year-old female presents to your clinic with persistent low mood, loss of interest in her usual activities, decreased energy and concentration, and feelings of guilt and worthlessness. What is your next step in management? Prozac and therapy, of course. So this was me. And I had started working on my mental health. I was going to the counseling center for therapy. I got my SSRI. But I still had trouble being honest about the extent I was struggling. Even with these professionals, I felt like I needed to hide my darkest thoughts and feelings because they weren't aligned with how I should be. And besides, what was the point? On paper, everything seemed fine. There weren't any red flags. I was passing my rotations, showing up every day with a smile on my face because that's just what you have to do. Everyone knows that third-year rotations are important. It's a continuous fight to seem like a confident, well-rounded student, and you're constantly being evaluated by everyone you interact with. Couldn't matter how many nights I spent awake or how miserable I felt. I would remind myself every day that I don't have the luxury of being sick right now and tell myself to suck it up. I knew that I was struggling, knew I wasn't really living, but as long as I was showing up and getting decent evaluations, I could pretend that everything was okay. I told myself that pushing through was strength, that functioning meant I wasn't that bad, and there was a part of me that judged the people who couldn't do the same. The worst part, the part I feel the most guilty about, is that I had this twisted sense of superiority over the people who weren't able to function through their mental illness. I felt like if I just kept all of my thoughts a secret and kept everything hidden in my head for long enough that it would all eventually just go away. But really, I was just letting things spiral out of control until I didn't have a choice anymore. For months, it felt like I was locked in my head, struggling with loops of dark, intrusive thoughts that just wouldn't stop. Even in the clinic, when I was supposed to be learning, I couldn't think about anything else. I couldn't listen on rounds or in lectures. I could barely understand the words that patients were telling me. I certainly couldn't connect with them because I wasn't really present. I didn't have the motivation to study or cook or even shower some days. I was letting my life get disorganized, ignoring texts and emails, forgetting to turn in assignments. I could barely stay awake during the day, but I couldn't sleep at night. But the part that scared me the most were the thoughts I was having that I didn't want or deserve to be alive anymore. It was constant, it became almost habitual, got to the point where it was the first thought I had when I woke up in the morning and the last that I had before going to sleep at night. Then, one day, after a long, demoralizing day in the wards, one where I felt like I had done everything wrong, I came home to an empty kitchen. I hadn't studied, hadn't run, hadn't done any of the things I told myself I was supposed to do. I sat on the floor trying to lace up my shoes, thinking maybe going for a run would help, but I just froze. It was like I couldn't move. Suddenly, all of those abstract thoughts and plans and rumination that had been happening in my head for months felt very real. There was a sense of urgency. I felt like I needed to act then because I just could not take it anymore. My thoughts were racing. I can't do this anymore. My friends and family will be fine without me. I need to do it now while I have the courage. Fortunately, my roommate found me in a panic, scared of myself, terrified of the thoughts I was having. And when I couldn't calm down, she brought me to the emergency room when I was admitted to the hospital. That hospital stay shifted something in me. For the first time, I couldn't keep pretending like everything was fine, and that terrified me. I was ashamed of myself for my weakness. I felt like everything I'd worked for was crashing down. But here's what actually happened. I reached out. I let people in. I told a trusted advisor what was going on. I was honest with my clerkship coordinator about the days that I'd missed. And instead of judgment or punishment, I was met with kindness and understanding. They checked in on me. I was given the space to get treatment during my elective block, and for the first time in a long time, I felt like I didn't have to hide anymore. And slowly, one day at a time, things started to improve. I had a treatment team to lean on, one that fully understood what was going on. I found medications that worked for me and spent so many hours talking about my feelings. I'm starting to find enjoyment in things again, and my clinical performance has improved because I'm able to show up with the mental capacity and clarity to fully participate and learn. Here's the thing. This problem isn't invisible and it isn't being ignored. There are hundreds of articles about stress, mental illness, and burnout in medical professionals. Most medical schools offer dedicated counseling and psychiatric services right on campus. Many offer workshops on stress management, coping strategies, and burnout. So what is it that's preventing medical students from openly using these resources and reaching out for help when it's desperately needed? Besides the culture of perfectionism and unrelenting standards that worsen our health, there is also a stigma. This is apparent in the way we talk about mental health amongst ourselves. We've all heard the comments, offhanded jokes about psych patients, residents bartering over who has to deal with the suicidal patient in the ED. I once heard a joke in the emergency department that we only get the patients who suck at killing themselves. These aren't just harmless statements. They're attitudes that have been normalized in the culture of medicine, and we, as medical students, absorb them. Not only does this impact our patient care, but what does it say about us? When this is the way we talk about our patients with mental illness, it becomes much harder to admit when we need help ourselves. If we see mental illness as weakness or a personal failure, we're less likely to feel we can show our own vulnerabilities. Looking back, I can see that I've been part of this problem. I was upholding the stigma that seeking help for your mental health, reaching out to better your health, is a sign of weakness. I do want to be clear about one thing. Medical school didn't cause my mental illness. These issues started long before clerkships or USMLEs. But the environment I was in made me hesitate to get help. Because in medicine, vulnerability is rarely modeled. We're taught to see strength as stoicism, composure, control. And so many of us internalize the idea that struggling in silence is somehow noble. And the consequences are real. Medical students are less likely to seek help for their mental health despite higher levels of depression, anxiety, and suicidal ideation. Not because we're unaware of the resources that are out there, but because we're afraid of what it means to use them. But culture isn't fixed. It isn't set in stone. It's created every day by the way we talk about patients, the way we react when a classmate finally works up the courage to say, "I'm struggling." So this is my challenge to all of us. We have to redefine what strength looks like. Strength isn't pretending to be fine when you're not. It's reaching out when every part of you is scared to. It's being honest, because honesty opens the door for real support. And yes, being vulnerable in medicine can still feel risky, but every time someone talks, it makes it just a little bit easier for the next person. So, 3 years ago, I couldn't have said any of this out loud, but today I can. Because I know that being honest doesn't mean losing my future. It's the first step towards reclaiming it. It took me a long time to admit I wasn't fine, and even longer to realize that the most powerful thing I could be is honest. This is the culture that medicine needs. Not one that demands rigid perfection, but one that makes space for honesty, humanity, and healing. Thank you.